Hi everyone, I'm Cookie Barker, and I've been playing a little bit on my lathe, making a big mixing bowl like this. It's about 15 inches in diameter, 4.5, 5 inches deep, and it's meant to be used. Although they're turning out to be pretty awesome too, so let's see how you make these things. So I use 1x2 by 24 inch stock from Forest to Home and create some different patterns with it. Make a picture frame basically around a 4-inch square and glue it together so that we don't have any seams left, and that's the base, and it gets rid of the end grain that you run into on the bottom of a bowl. So what I'm doing here is trying to create the finished inside bottom of the bowl because I won't have the opportunity to come back at that with my tools. I can't get in there. So that's the inside bottom, and then when you turn this over, I do the outside bottom so that I can fit it back on the lathe. So I designed this bowl to have the same profile as a large mixing bowl, and I drew it out on paper and then sketched in where different levels of rings would be, and then had to figure out the size that I needed to make those rings. So there's this app on GeoGebra.com that helps you do that. You can calculate the number of segments that you want just by sliding the thing. You can do 2 segments in the ring if you want, which I keep it single. Switch it to inches for sure. And then you can just slide the rings to whatever you want the inside diameter to be and the outside diameter of the ring. And it gives you the little cutout segment that you need to build right there in blue. It's pretty cool. The next part you have to do is then figure out what pattern you want those rings to be in to create the pattern for your bowl. I'm just mixing and matching these days. To build these segments, I use the 1x2 stock 36 inch, and I definitely, every time I set up my miter chop saw, I run a sample through it first. And then I just put the segments in there and flip them over each time and cut them down, and there are my segments. You need 12 segments per ring. Then you just put them together to make sure you got a nice clean circle. And it's just a matter of arranging the pattern that you were looking for. Okay, it's time to glue together my ring. So I want to make sure my pieces don't have little burrs on them, because that'll interfere with how tightly the rings fit together, or the segments. I recently picked up some ratchet straps that work really nice for this. Before you can put the rings together, you have to make sure that they are flat on both sides. So I've got this tool that I am able to stick the rings on with double-sided sticky tape, and I take them over to my lathe I put my big sanding wheel that I created on there, and I just sand them down. Now I've recently switched that to 80 grit sandpaper, and that works best. And that's just a piece of plywood that I created for the lathe. Really important that you have a flat surface when you're sticking these guys together though. So then I just pop them off of there, because I remember I had them on with double-sided sticky tape, flip them around and do the other side, and I do that with all the rings, and it works really well. So now we take the base that we created and we are going to arrange it together with all the rings that we have sanded down, and then it's time to glue this together. So there are different ways you can do that. Here's one approach where you stack them all up and clamp them down, and here's another approach where you go ring by ring, clamping them in. Either way, it gets kind of messy. And here we are at the lathe, ready to make this set of rings into a bowl. Enjoy. And depending on how sharp you had your tools, depends on how much sandpaper you're going to need to get this bowl finished off. And so that's it. The bowl is finished with the lathe, and we're ready to make it shine. Add a little tung oil, and that tung oil, by the way, when it finishes out, is food safe. So that's how I make my big mixing bowls. Happy woodworking.